Hello and welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. Today we are continuing with the smaller paintings, just working on very exploratory things. Here is a 5x7. I think it is cropped down to about, I don't know, let's just say a 3x5. We're just bringing it in smaller, less surface area to work on, just to kind of help it proceed quicker. I'm working with just small squirrel mops, just stuff that I found. This one was at Hobby Lobby, about the same quality as the really cheap ones on Amazon or Temu. And I am looking for kind of late day, early evening effects. So it's color exploration, and then from there, texture effects since I'm working smaller, and also looking at different linear perspectives with the size and the scenes. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of what I've been exploring. I'm going to take my, can't even think of the name. I'm going to start washing it in and then I'll let it get to you. Naples Yellow. This is Daniel Smith's version. A lot of different brands have a Naples yellow. Some of them are redder. Some of them have the white mix in. In fact, I think this one might have a titanium white in it. I'm not sure. I'm just gonna, you know what, I'm gonna pass this over the whole thing. I coated my paper with a combination of water and powdered gum arabic. And I'm experimenting with that to see how that affects the painting result as well. Let me get some Prussian blue on here and then let's do ultramarine. And then I'll kind of talk about that. So with the idea, the gum arabic is the binder in watercolor, and I think it essentially acts as a glue, where it's different than oil painting, where linseed oil is like the carrier that the pigment dries in, I think. While here the gum arabic is kind of like, I'm not even explaining it well, so I'm sorry. So here the idea is that it'll coat the paper with glue essentially, and then the pigments will hopefully sit on top of the glue and not go into the paper. Okay. I apologize for that bad line of thought. I probably won't talk as much during this one, just because, like I said, it is very exploratory. There's a lot of different new things that I'm working with. But the idea of the pigment sitting on top of the glue rather than going into the parts of the paper itself then might have more intensity to it. Okay. So now that I have that in place, just for ease, I'm just going to switch to a really small brush. I've been playing with these small rounds, and I'm really going to try not to pick around too much, but I'm just grabbing some palette mud as well as some Van Dyke brown, and I'm just looking for my horizon line. And as I look at tonalist landscapes and look at Luminism and Hudson River Valley, I would say that it seems very common in the tonalist movements, or at least in the works of modern artist Dennis Sheehan and historical artists from the late 1800s, John Francis Murphy, that it was quite common to have this background line, which we see a lot in watercolor paper paintings to begin with. But in the oil painters, this one was often quite dark tonally, and between that and then a common tree line that's a little bit closer to us, where the main elements pop off of, that's used significantly to get a sense of depth within the painting. Now this tree line right here could definitely make it a lot more exciting and energetic and have a lot of changes with it, bring stuff closer in the picture plane, etc. And yeah, so that right there just gives you a very easy perspective taking place. In the works of Dennis Sheehan, and I'm going to grab, and I've been kind of debating what colors I really want for this part or how I want to approach it, but I'm just going to grab some quinacridone gold to show you that layer of a field or a swamp or a marsh that's beyond what our kind of center of interest is going to be, and that right there then leads into that far distant tree line. So that's representative of just a very far space going back in the picture plane. Now another thing I've been experimenting with is with oils. I'll do an underpainting with a lot of texture and movement, and I think I did this in a lot of videos before I started doing some more time lapses. I think I said in the last video why I was doing a lot of time lapses. It wasn't just the experimentation, it was the neighbor and his dirt bike riding in suburbia and just too much noise. But what I've been experimenting with here is creating these textures, and this is just a mixture of like probably lamp black and Van Dyke brown. I don't really have any specific colors I want to use yet for these kind of underlying marks, but the idea is that whenever I do a wash over it when it's dry, is to have all those textures and kind of get the effect of having spent a while trying to paint those and just getting a lot of detail in there without really doing anything. Now, I think my sky is probably still wet. I don't want to lift anything up with a finger or anything like that. But I'll grab that same, actually let's not use a dark. Let's use gamboge or the quin gold, or you could use any yellow. I'll use it to map out the outside edges of trees. And this is where I would say it probably diverges from the tonalist that I mentioned, and then goes more probably classical landscape painting, where we have kind of a glow around the edge of the trees, and then we work on more of I can't think of the word, a silhouette on the inside. That's something that I've tried to figure out for a long while, and I feel like I'm actually starting to sit down and approach it correctly, where I really do not care if you use black in watercolor painting. I use black all the time. In fact, I'm just going to grab some black and just put it in there. But with silhouettes, if you just have like the blue background with the black on top of it with the silhouette, it just looks too contemporary for me, and I think it's more interesting, more aesthetically pleasing, or just kind of works better, is if we work with complementary colors. You probably also noticed that with the stumbling through the language of it, it's because for so long with the videos we did monochrome studies or very limited palette studies, and didn't so much talk about complementary colors as we did talk about just warm and cool, and just tonal values and how they would just push back and forth. Okay, just get the idea of tree trunks in here. I'm going to wind up coming back, I believe, and working on those a little bit differently. The straight tree line is kind of the safest bet for me right now, as I've been exploring bringing that tree line forward into the picture plane, and there's just a lot of different interplay that I have to do with these pigments and the brushes themselves. So there's stuff that I have to explore in that regard to see if I want to separate foliage as stuff comes closer, or if I want to just have a dark mass, but it's coming forward. And that's very common in the old master paintings, where those shadows blend together from one mass to the next. In fact, next time you look at an old painting, look for those dark shadows and see how they explore and move throughout from one image to the next, one object. But I'm going to pause the camera. I'm going to hit it with the blow dryer. Now here, talking about colors, I'm pulling out of pans, and I've been working with this as opposed to straight from the tube with the other paintings and the Hake brush paintings. And I find it difficult to mix my colors that I'm working with whenever I'm working from pans. So I have been trying to do a lot of mixing on the paper itself. So I put out some convenience colors, and we can use one of them to see how that looks. This one is, let's see what it says. I have a whole list of the colors that I'd put out, and also wanted to see what I wind up reaching for. This is Van Gogh brand Olive Gold. It is student grade, and I'm not sure if I would keep that on the palette, because I also had a tube of Winsor Newton Green Gold, and if I grab that, they're kind of very similar, I think. Oh no, they aren't. Now, this is like the very classically vibrant watercolors, and I don't want this to be my end result. But hopefully so far you see just a whole bunch of texture, and now we have an idea of color in there, and I'll probably do a lot of pushing back and forth with that. So we'll come back to that in a bit, and we'll talk about that. But I like to work the whole painting at once. I'm done with the sky. I'm not going to mess with anything there. But here's Perylene Green. It's actually a black pigment. I think it's like PBK 33. I think most brands produce it, but I felt myself wanting to reach for a dark green, or try to mix a dark green, which I probably would have went with like a Prussian or phthalo blue mixed with burnt umber. But here it's once again just convenience color, so I'm not spending time trying to mix on there. So I'm using this for the darker inside masses. Also, this from Daniel Smith, it says it has an excellent light fast rating, while every other brand says very good. And I don't know if like Daniel Smith is more, maybe it's more solid pieces. I don't know why it would be different. But yeah, phthalo blue and burnt umber or a burnt sienna would give you a nice dark green to play with. More toward the inside shadow areas. I'm liking the way this guy's getting more feel to it. I'm going to put a shadow in. I'm going to bring shadows together from one thing to the next. So hopefully you can see that there, that blending in. And that kind of really just helps make it seem less stick figure-ish. We could have used this for our dark marks underneath if we wanted to as well. Okay, I think it's worth just doing a quick dry off. Just when working like this, it's very easy to start disturbing the under layers. So it's just a lot easier just to be like, okay, it's time to dry. I accidentally turned the video off, so I'm just stitching them together. Now, by the way, just a quick thing, if you want to support this channel on Patreon, if you like it, I have the links down below. Please consider supporting it. I use that money for more art supplies and to film more videos. And you're always welcome to follow along, sign your own name, sell anything you do when you follow along. I want you guys to have fun. All right, so I was looking at it through the camera itself, and it has more of a daytime vibe, so we might try to keep it within that. But that being said, I want to grab, I've been using this transparent orange. This one is from, who is it from? Winsor Newton. Let's get a little bit of ideas in there, a little bit of variety. It's not the complementary color to green, but it's complementary to the blue in the sky. I want to see how that affects things and affects our overall feel. And since we're dry, I'm going to grab some Naples yellow. And oh, it looks a little muddy. Let me clean that off. I don't think Naples yellow is really what I want to go with. So let's go back to the Quin Gold. We can use that. Now I've been having a lot of fun with the interplay of tree trunks and the field or the sky behind it. We're not getting a huge contrast there, and I think the contrast really helps. Well, we probably have more or less contrast with a daytime scene. But here's some buff titanium, seeing if I can push that around. Before I do a dry off, let's just grab alizarin crimson, and this is Daniel Smith's permanent mixture. Alizarin crimson, the traditional one, is not light fast at all. It's fugitive, so it means it could fade. And honestly, just check the light fastness ratings of whatever paints that you buy, because for some reason they still offer them, and I know Winsor Newton does, the original alizarin crimson, and you might buy one that you don't want. So bring a little tree line down. I think we'll work with greens back into the landscape in a moment, into the ground itself. But you can also grab, we used around the edges, the gamboge. You can also play with some Quin Gold. The differences in there, see what happens. Grab something just to put in there. I don't really want any spaces along the edges. I'm going to pause for a quick dry off. And I'll grab a green. Let's grab sap green. Here's some perylene green. And darkening these objects and darkening the landscape is what pushes this to feel like later evening or early morning. So you can stop at any point with whatever vibe you're feeling with those, because as we saw earlier, it gave more of a daytime feel. Okay. Quick dry off. Okay, I grabbed some dried white gouache and I just mixed in some gamboge into it, just so I can redo this far field layer that I was telling you about. And if you start interplaying that mix, you get to see a little bit of that field behind it. And that really gives a sense of interest. I'm not going to fiddle with that far background. I like the way it looks. But if you also are having trouble getting that effect, you can actually wash over that area with white gouache and it recedes the image. And if you want to go for a really high contrast, let's just grab some black and you can start playing around there. I've also been playing around using this brush to lift those holes in those spots after painting quite heavily, and I'm really liking the effect that I'm getting there as well. Just blending some shadows together. Also, we could maybe lift a little bit. So I'm going to take a little bit of wet, see what I can lift out of this, and maybe get a little stream or a path going. I wouldn't be surprised if the gum arabic layer that I put on the paper first also helps assist this type of lifting, especially if you're working with staining pigments. But I honestly do not know yet. So I can lift that out, and then if we wanted that to be a road, I'm just going to grab Naples yellow. So not counting the stopping and starting, I think we only did 20 minutes into this. And that's one of the reasons why I'm working so small. To only spend 20 or 30 minutes to explore, see what I want to change, see what I want to work with. See what pigments are working well together, what palettes are happening, or even what brush strokes that I'm initially doing that I might want to leave out or expand upon. I've also been doing a lot of this, just using the back of the handle to kind of push things around a little bit. Your fingernail would work fine. And that's just another carryover from oil painting. Let's bring a tree line here. Just a little something going on. And of course, you can put a little glow behind this guy. And then at this point, it boils down to how convincing I can make these tree silhouettes. And of course, if we want other texture, let's see if we can get a little bit of... I've been trying with the fan brush for texture, but once it gets wet, the different ends want to hold together, and then like that. And I'm stabbing it onto the palette to try to get them to break up a little bit. So it's been a little tedious. For other areas of interest, let's grab some gold gamboge. We can even start pushing things around like that. Okay, last dry off and then we'll pull the paint up. So I hope you enjoyed, and I hope that this stuff is going in an interesting direction and that the thoughts and ideas that I'm providing are helpful. And when you pull up tape, pull away so that if it tears out and away, and it doesn't tear the painting paper. It'll tear the paper potentially, but not the painting. Okay. So there we have it. I might have a small 5x7 mat we can put over it to see what it looks like. Yeah, and that mat makes it a little easier if you were to go ahead and sell anything this size. People don't have to worry too much about a different size frame, and you can just float this underneath. All right, hope you enjoyed. Hope you all have a great day, and take care. Bye.